Ready? The Budget and Finance Committee will please come to order. Mr. Sampson, would you please review the county's financial status?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I'm going to try to stay focused as best I can. I'm working off the phone today. Members, you should have gotten an email this afternoon about 5 o'clock with the heading April Treasurer's Reports, and there's also for members that are present, there are copies there. We're going to start with the summary of statements from the fourth report. County General Fund 1,000, $2,032,002.99. County Road Fund 2,000, $4,341,371. County Road Sales Tax Fund 3402, $2,224,049. Animal Welfare and Control Fund 3404, $1,729,594.30. Criminal Justice Tax Fund 3407, $1,490,673.45. Turn to page 2. That's the chart of county general revenue. And as we started out the first of the year, so now we are above 2020 slightly. As we've talked about in the past, this is not really substantial. We'll wait and see what April, May bring. May essentially, and of course we always wait till October, November to see what our real numbers are. But let's go at this point. You turn to page 3. Sales tax for March was $868,412.86. That is 15.92 better than March of 2020. This is a huge number. We're 10.74% versus year-to-date 2020. I called around on this. When numbers get high like this, like I told you before, I usually make calls around to make sure that we're not the only one. It was this way all the way around. I don't know what's causing that. Like I said, I'm kind of expecting somewhere between 7 and 10% right now, but this 15 or nearly 16% is pretty high. So keep an eye on it. Of course, sales tax is really doing well on the revenue side. If you look with me to page 4, that's got our totals there. You see we're 27% projected, and that's through 3 months of the year, 1 quarter, 25% of the year. So you can see we're ahead of projected there. And then on the last page is that chart, the 1-year moving average versus the 3-month moving average, and we continue to stay above the 1-year moving average. The 1-year moving average continues to turn up at a pretty good pace. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The next is Ordinance 21-09, and I need a motion to put it on the table for discussion. So moved. Second? Second. Good. Are there any questions or comments about Section 1 in the ordinance?
Mr. Chair, I do have a question on the ordinance title. I assume it's just a typo, so we all on the same page. I assume it's supposed to be 21-09, not 20-09.
On the summary?
On the
I think
the
it's-
summary.
I think the summary just has a.
Yeah, the summary just has a typo, sorry.
Any comments about questions about Section 2? Section 3, Section 4, Section 5, Section 6.
I have a question on the, Mr. Chair, on the Homeland Security Grant Fund. Is there anyone who can speak to, I'd just be curious, are there any conditions on that money, or I wouldn't want to be in a situation where we have a grant and then for some reason it's not used exactly as the grant says, and all of a sudden we have to pay that back. I don't know if anybody has information on that.
Yes, sir. This is actually a reimbursement grant. The county is just a pass-through. But basically, the city of Conway applies for the grant money. They pay for the equipment. They send us the information. We send it to the state, get reimbursed, and pay it back.
Okay. Thank you.
Section 7, Section 8, Section 9. If there are no comments or questions, I need a motion to move proposed ordinance 21-09 to the full court for its consideration.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 The ordinance is passed to the full court for its consideration. Next is proposed ordinance 21-12. Are there any questions or comments about section 1? Section 2. Section 3.
Mr. Chair, I have a question on section 2. I've seen an email that, I think Ms. Lewis had sent out, kind of explaining what happened. Would you mind just kind of telling us what happened for anyone who
Yeah.
hasn't seen the email?
Basically, the kitchen sink in our 813 Faulkner on the real estate side, somebody walked in there one day, pushed the faucet up, and it started spewing water all over in the sink. So, we didn't even, I knew there was a statute about employees not being able to have anything, within the county, but not about family members and how far that extends out. So anyway, there was an employee of mine that her husband is a commercial plumber. David Smith happened to come over. We called him. He happened to come over there immediately. We looked at it and called him. He stopped by there and looked at it and decided real quick without charging us anything that it was going to need to be replaced. And he goes through Southern Pipe to do all their stuff commercially. So he said that he could get one. And it was supposed to be gone all the way through maintenance, but David Smith was off the rest of that week. It was Easter week, I think, anyway. So he was off the rest of the week. So basically, he went and got the faucet and came back, changed it out that exact same day. Now it's fixed. Gave me an invoice. Maintenance was supposed to pay for it, but he was out of town. And so before I went out of town, I was gone Thursday. I decided to just pay the invoice, and then later on, the next thing to come up, maintenance could pay for it. So I did, and when we went to get the invoice started around the county, we figured out that the statute was in place that wouldn't allow that or whatever after the services have already been done. So this would be a one-time thing. I just want everybody to know that we weren't aware that it was a deal, so even if this was passed to add him to the services, he would not be used anymore. This would just be to pay him now, and then we would not do that again. So it would be an ongoing thing.
How much was the invoice?
It was $225. It was the $125 was the faucet, and then he charged $100. Didn't charge anything to look at or come out or do anything. So that was total everything.
Questions or comments about section 3? Section 4? Section 5? Section 6? If there are no comments or questions about proposed ordinance 21-12, we need a motion to advance the ordinance to the full court for its consideration.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ordinance ordinance, 21-12 is passed to the full court for its consideration. The next is proposed ordinance, 21-13, sponsored by Jesse Lukowski. Mr. Lukowski, would you like to stand and address your proposed ordinance?
I'm gonna pass y'all out this act that passed. I believe it has been signed by the governor, else I wouldn't have taken any action on it. Basically, current law states that you don't have to, it is unlawful for a county official to make any purchase with county funds in excess of $20,000 unless the method of purchase is prescribed under this chapter as follows. And they go through the bidding procedures and everything that we experience now. State legislature passed it, bumping it up to $35,000. So basically, this ordinance is a control put in place by this county to say, no, we're good, we'll keep it at 20. Our elected officials wouldn't have to do anything different than what they're doing now. It just keeps the threshold where it is, prevents it from going up to $35,000. I think it's just a good practice to put in place. The court at any time can come back and if this passes and change this ordinance as it see fit. Another thing in the legislature that it does is that in 5-year intervals, it adjusts based off the consumer price index. So it would keep this amount every 5 years, would keep bumping up based on, I guess, what would be inflation. So it's just my attempt to keep it at $20,000 for Faulkner County and for our taxpayers.
So just to be clear, Justice Lahowski, so the act does have provisions for it to go up above 35,000. Our ordinance will keep it at 20,000 even regardless of what the act does.
Correct.
Unless the court deems otherwise.
Correct. Yes, sir. And I didn't type this up specifically. I passed it to Mr. Murphy and I said, this is my idea, this is what I want to do, and he came up with this, with the wording and everything.
This is line 31, beginning January 1, 2025. Does this not take effect until 2025?
So I think that's just when it bumps up based off.
5-year interval.
So this was in effect in 2020.
The Bureau, this just passed this regular session in 2021. I got with the Bureau of Legislative Research, and they said that this bill would go into place, I believe, somewhere around August this year, because it's already been signed by the governor. So that gives us time to do. You see, there's no emergency clause attached to it. There's no money attached to it. So I would expect a full 3 readings on the ordinance before you.
So that should give us an opportunity that if any of the other elected officials in the county have any feedback for or against, they'll have plenty of opportunity to do so.
Absolutely, and I have not reached out to elected officials in the county to ask them their opinion on this because it's how we operate now. So I don't see much of an impact besides limiting their potential in the future to spend without having to go through a formal bidding process. There's a lot of exceptions and exclusions in this, having to do with commodities and stuff like that, all the things that I believe are currently in place. This doesn't touch that, does it? They can still spend on the excluded items the way they need to.
Mr. Chair, in light of the fact that we'll have 3 readings on this, we'll have plenty of time for other elected officials to provide their feedback if they have it so choose. I make a motion that we pass this with full court.
Any further comment on the proposed ordinance 21-13? Then I need a motion. You have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor of advancing this to the full court for its consideration, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Pass to the full court.
Thank you, Justice Fagan.
There's no further business to come before the Budget and Finance. We are recessed.
How about adjourn?
Pardon?
Adjourn?
Recessed or adjourned?
Adjourn. Adjourn.
There you go.
I did truly appreciate your time.
Art? Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'll write everybody down
Very
there.
good, thank you.
So if you don't get paid, let me know. I'll have a talk with the clerk.
So personnel committee's next?
Yep.
I'm ready when the room is ready. Margaret, if you want to call the roll. Or if you need to call the roll.
Are you ready, did you say?
Yes, I'll call the personnel committee to order.
Okay. John Pickett,
Fred, here.
Justin Knight,
Here.
Jerry Boyer,
Present?
Chris Kendricks,
Here.
Tyler Pearson.
I'm here.
Okay, they're all present.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. All right, the first item on the agenda will be ordinance 2111, the catastrophic leave amendment. We're picking this up off the table from our last meeting, and I'll open the floor up for discussion to committee members first, and then other forum court members second, and additional members of the public after that. So I'll open it up to the committee.
This is just Kendrick, just a point of order, if we're gonna move it off the table, don't you need a motion in a second?
I don't believe I do, Justice Kendrick, we can check with legal on this, but because it was just tabled, and according to the Democratic Rules of Order, the chair can pick it back up off the table, but Councilor Doom weighed in.
Yeah, under our rules, essentially when we use the term table, that's basically withdrawing that motion. And that motion can either appear in one of two ways, either one, a motion and a second, or two, the chairperson can put it on the agenda. So I think this is on the agenda, so that suffices for being able to take something off of the table.
Very good.
Any discussion from the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is Justice Knight. I was able to talk to several county employees over the last month, and I think a lot of this is some really good moving in the right direction. They voiced their concerns over a couple of issues, mainly the issue where the employee was able to use catastrophic leave before they actually used their own personal vacation. So for me to really get behind it, I'd have to, I'd want to make an amendment to it to allow catastrophic leave only after an employee has used their own personal time.
Okay, so just if I can just respond to that. So if you want to amend the ordinance to do that, there's really not any point to do that, in my opinion. Because right now, as the catastrophic leave thing currently exists, you can use it for maternity purposes once you've already exhausted your leave. So there's not really a need to change the catastrophic leave thing policy in order for an employee to utilize the catastrophic leave bank once they've exhausted all of their vacation or sick time. So from my perspective, the whole point of this ordinance is that part of it that allows an employee to use leave bank for maternity leave before they've exhausted their sick leave or vacation time. And, so that is the reason for it. And when this was originally brought to my attention, the employee was describing that I talked to, was describing their situation and how, they had, I think, 2 children within close proximity, close timeline of one another, and so they didn't have the time to build their leave bank back up. And so they wanted to be able to save some of their vacation and sick leave, so in case their kid actually got sick, they would have that available. Or if they actually needed to go on vacation for work-life balance, they would have that available. So, my perspective is if you want to change it by amending it, the committee can certainly do that, but at that point, I would probably withdraw my own support from it because it's not really necessary. Does that make sense?
Okay. I agree, yes. I think that may be the exact point that the employees, their concerns were that, or the concern was that there may not be as many people putting into the catastrophic leave bank because it has the potential to be, to draw down faster than in previous years. So that was their concern at that, with that particular issue. So they have to use all their vacation, even though they may not be able to have a child. So, they're sick. So, now that I understand it clearly, I wouldn't be able to support the ordinance as written.
Okay. Well, from the folks that I talked to, there was a need for this, and it is a different circumstance, than traditional catastrophic leave, to use the term. But if you don't support the idea of, maternity leave for Faulkner County employees, you're certainly entitled to that.
Well, I certainly support maternity leave. Hold it right there. The problem is if Jim Bob gets cancer and he's got to go out got to take time off to get treatment, he's got to use all his vacation time first. And that's not the way to maternity leave with this ordinance. So that's the problem that a lot of people have with it. So it has nothing to do with maternity leave. It's that the other employees have to burn all of their time that they've accrued. And they may have been putting into the catastrophic leave bank for the last 20 years and haven't used any at all. And they don't want to see it drawn down and just used because somebody wants to save their vacation for work-life balance. Because for some of our employees, they don't get that much. There's not a lot of work-life balance. They're on call all the time. If there's a bridge that goes out at midnight on Saturday, they're out there with the traco and putting in a new culvert or something like that. So I understand it's just, we're trying to squeeze in everybody's situation, and it's very hard to do. And so I do appreciate your work on this. It's just, I think it may hurt more employees than it helps, potentially. So
all the numbers that I crunched and put together before the committee, at our last meeting, because I'm with you, if this drew down on the catastrophic leave thing to a point where there wasn't a healthy accumulation of hours in that thing, then I wouldn't be in support of it either. The only reason that I moved forward with it is because I felt with a high degree of confidence after crunching all those numbers that there will still be a healthy growth in the leave bank, that people who have been contributing to the leave bank, for them, the program won't change at all. They'll still have access to the catastrophic leave bank. All this does is creates an additional benefit for Faulkner County and Faulkner County employees utilizing those surplus hours that the employees themselves are donating. So I don't think personally that this will have an unhealthy drawdown on the leave bank. In order for that to happen, and another thing, if it did happen, we could easily see that well in advance of depleting the bank. We can keep track of the depletion of the hours over time. And if this does get passed, and we get a year or two into the program, and all of a sudden, the numbers that I crunched were way wrong, and we've got 20 people a year that are having babies and using the maternity leave for it, then we can change the policy, before it gets to a point of threatening the actual overall health of the leave bank. so that it's still protected for those employees that have been contributing it, like you said, for years. Thank you. Any other discussion from the committee? Hearing none, I'll turn to other members of the court who are in attendance who would like to comment.
Justice Pearson, this is Justice Rowland. Can I speak?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, I've talked to a few people about this issue as well, and I'm all for maternity leave. But I just have to point out, as everyone is considering this ordinance, that really the point, the hours that are in the bank right now is determined upon the age level of our employees. So have you looked into the age level of all of our employees? Are they, how many do we have that are getting older? Because, it is such a great place to work that we have many that retire from Faulkner County. So, I would hate to see that, right now we have a great system in place for maternity leave. It didn't work for one particular individual, and I don't know who that is, and that doesn't matter, but it is a great system. It has worked, and so my issue that I'm having a hard time understanding is why are we trying to fix a system that we have in place that's really not broken? And I do believe that I think we might tread, I just don't think that, I'm not comfortable with the possibility of everybody using the bank hours. If we have a bunch of young mothers that come in and they're able to use, the catastrophic bank hours, and then we have several people that get cancer. And I think it's a great system as it is. It's a great protection for all as it is. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up? So you said that the age determines the hours?
So if we have, let's see if I can get this across. If we have a bunch of young 20-year-olds and we have several pregnancies throughout the county for, a couple of years in a row, then that's going to deplete the bank down. And so what's going to happen to the friend over here that gets cancer? I mean, I just...
So I don't know if you were at our last personnel committee meeting or heard the breakdown that I gave, but I'm going to go over a little bit of that, if that's okay, to address some of those concerns for everyone in attendance. Because Justice Rowland, I had the same concerns. I did not want to move forward with this idea if it was going to be unsustainable for the county and unhealthy for the overall health of the catastrophic leave bank. I didn't want to change the current structure of that leave bank for the employees that have been contributing to it, and I wanted to make sure that it would continue to be there for them. So yes, I did look at very extensively at the total number of employees in Faulkner County. I looked at the total number of female employees in Faulkner for the county government. Furthermore, I looked at the ages of all those female employees. And I will pull that up here. But basically, I broke down, I think there are 78, if I remember correctly, there are 78 total female employees in Faulkner for the Faulkner County government. And let me pull these numbers up, but of those 78, I think there were, some 40 or 50 that were between the ages of 18 and 44, the childbearing years. And so what I did is I actually got, data from the CDC on birth rates for Faulkner County by those same age groups. And so I did a little math and said, okay, we have 10 employees that are ages 21 to 23, or We have 7 employees that are this age, and I just used that birth rate information, the fertility rates is what it is, and multiply it by the amount of employees that we have within that age group. And doing that is a pretty good educated guess as to how many times, will give you a pretty good educated guess as to how many times that many female employees would actually have a child each year. And it came out to be 5. So 5 times a year, using this method of looking at the total number of childbearing age female employees for Faulkner County and multiplying that by the fertility rates for Faulkner County, gives you a pretty good idea that, yeah, this is going to be used about 5 times a year. And I personally think that that is a very high estimate, or not very high, but I think that's even higher than it would be. I think it's probably going to be used 2 to 3 times a year. And I think it's high because fertility rate data takes into account, every single child that is born. So twins and triplets are included in that. And we're just talking about, whether someone has 2 or 3 kids, it doesn't matter. They're just taking one set of leave. So, and it's also a much larger sample size. And when you're dealing with larger sample sizes for the entire county, you're going to get more data. And I think that's going to influence it to skew it a little bit higher. So, using that method of actually looking at how many childbearing age female employees are in Faulkner County and multiplying it by the fertility rates for those same age groups for Faulkner County. I mean, you can get down to the nitty-gritty stuff when you get into the CDC's databases that they keep. Gives you a pretty good idea of how many times it would be used. So if it was used 5 times a year by county employees at 400 hours per use, or how many hours? Let me see. It's 4 weeks times 40, 40 hours a week, so it's 160, and then do that times 5, and it's 800 hours. So if it was used 5 times a year, it would draw down 800 hours from the leave bank each year. And on average, there's a surplus of more than 1,200 hours in the leave bank that it grows each year. So the leave bank, on average, over a 5-year average, is growing some 1,100 to 1,200 hours a year. And if we implemented this program and it was used 5 times a year, it would change that to, it would be growing. It would still be growing, is the point. The leave bank would still be growing even if we implemented this program. I feel pretty confident in that. And like I said to Justice Knight, if I'm way wrong, we can change the program. If all of a sudden it gets used 10 times a year, it's going to be a lot at first. I don't think it'll happen, but if it did, we could change the program. We could bust it down to 2 weeks, or we could omit it entirely and say it's not sustainable. We tried, but we can't do it. But, like I said, I wouldn't have moved forward with this if I didn't believe, honestly, that we could provide an additional benefit to Faulkner County employees, which will make Faulkner County a more attractive employer, will help us retain our employees, will help us retain our female employees at a time when females are dropping out of the workforce, especially because of the COVID-19 pandemic, more so than ever. So anything that we can do to keep Faulkner County as a premier employer, and keep our female employees working so that they don't have to make the choice of, well, do I want to keep working or do I want to have kids? Because I think they do have to weigh that. And I personally don't think that people should have to decide between working and having children. Fortune 500 companies all across this country are implementing way more robust maternity leave policies than this. We talk all the time about running a government like a business. Well, if we're going to do that, we need to compete with some of these businesses that are offering their employees excellent benefit packages. And we can do so in a way that doesn't cost the county. These are the county employees' hours that they've donated themselves. And there's a substantial surplus year over year within those donated hours. So why not do the innovative thing and offer that additional benefit?
Well,
Justice Knight, I'll give Justice Baldwin the chance to reply before.
I understand what you're saying, and I would love to offer the moon to everybody. I mean, and that's the reality. All of us would like to do that. But the reality is, yes, we've got 78 employees that might be at birth age, available to have birth at this point, but we don't know what that's gonna be next year. And we don't know what's gonna happen next year as far as, who might get cancer, or who might need to take time off to take care of a loved one, which I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but under the catastrophic bank, an employee can take leave to take care of a loved one that needs to be cared for. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yes, I think that is correct. I will say that every year, I can share the data with you, and you can look at every single year to see how much leave is drawn down from the leave bank. And the highest year to date, I believe, is the most recent one, and probably because of COVID. And even then, there's still a surplus of growth in the hours.
Well, we have to remember too with this last year that with COVID, we gave everybody special leave. So in a year when there traditionally probably would have been a very, very heavy drawdown from this, they didn't have to do that. So I don't know if you can call that a direct equation just because of that, because they were protected with special leave. I don't think you work for a Fortune 500 company, do you, Justice Pearson?
No, but I get 6 weeks.
No, so I actually do, and I can tell you that I haven't seen a private industry or business yet that comes anywhere close to giving the amount of leave that an employee can carry at max at the county between sick time and vacation time, which I believe, if they're maxed out and carrying over, is around, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Murphy, is around combined, 640 hours, 650 hours, which is, it's a tremendous amount that they can carry over. I haven't seen any private business that can even touch that. So, I'm not sure that's a direct link there saying that private businesses are offering things that Faulkner County isn't, because I've never seen a private business offer as much time off as a county or a state government employee did. So, just a note.
Right. So I'll get back to you with the actual amount of carryover hours. Just Kendrick, if you like, I do have that information. As to the current leave policy for vacation and sick time.
Mr. Chairman, this is Justice Knight again. Again, I do appreciate the work that's been put into this. There's a lot of work. You've looked at the numbers, and I don't doubt the numbers. There's just the other part of the equation that is really the unknown that we can't really quantify is, if this is implemented, we can look at averages, but what we don't know is will there be decline in how many hours the average employee puts into it. It may not change. It may go up, may go down, but that's what we don't know. And this doesn't directly impact us. This impacts our employees. So whatever we decide here, we do need to do our due diligence, and I appreciate the work that's gone into this, and I think we need to continue this discussion. So thanks very much for all this.
Sure. Well, I'll say that, if the hours do decline, we can easily track that. These numbers are kept up with by multiple employees in the county. They are keeping an eye on it every year. And talking about, is there going to be some substantial use that we can't account for? This has been in place since at least 2007, and we have data going all the way back to 2007. So for 14, almost 15 years, we can see how often the catastrophic leave bank is drawn down. And there's never been, I think there was 1 year where it got close, or may have exceeded slightly. But other than that, there's surplus in every single other year, 14 out of 15 years. So, having all of that data and all of that history, I don't know, it gives me a high degree of confidence that there's way more than enough leave being built up year over year. There's already such a huge surplus of 26,000, I think it's like 26,000 hours, that if we did have 1 year where all of a sudden, 10 folks got cancer and we draw down a bunch on the bank, there's still a huge surplus to take care of that, So I don't know, I think this is a win-win for the county, for county employees, and I'm not really sure why, and maybe I'm not explaining it right, I don't know, but is there any other, comments from other board members?
I'd like to speak to you, Justice Allison.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I looked at this too, and when I first looked at it, and I appreciate your math, the numbers, I was impressed, and when I first looked at it last month, I was right along with you, and I thought this was gonna be great, but I do appreciate that Justice Kendrick suggested we table it, gave me a chance to talk to some of the county department heads and look up some more information and stuff. And the same concerns that the previous justices have mentioned, I have a concern with, mainly because it creates an exception for this special case where we beat that horse to death pretty much. But I'm more concerned with the morale of the employees who can't take and make use of this maternity leave, the older ladies and the men, and how that's going to affect them when they have to use all of their vacation time and sick leave, if they have to take care of a sick spouse, or if they have to take care of an ailing mother, or if they just get sick themselves and they have to use all of their vacation. They don't get the opportunity to make that work-life balance thing that you mentioned. So that's a concern to me. I also looked up the state catastrophic leave policy because I think I felt like last time that this was put in place to mirror that. And I want to show you that the state, when I printed off section 3 and the eligibility requirements for catastrophic leave in the state personnel employees policy, says that for the employees, before they can tap the catastrophic leave bank for the state, they have to have had at least a credit of 80 hours combined sick and annual leave. For maternity purposes, it says they don't have to have that 80 combined hours, but they must still exhaust all of their available leave before they can tap.
That's not accurate. You might want to check what year you pulled that from, because
it was 2018.
The state legislature passed this unanimously.
This was 2018.
I copied my ordinance verbatim from the state policy.
This was 2018. Can you tell what year yours was?
2020. 2021. I mean, I'm just telling you right now, my wife is a state employee. She does not have to draw all of her vacation and sick time down before she has to take maternity leave, and I know this because we're getting ready to have a baby in June.
Okay, well, the last one that I've
utilized the state's policy twice now, and it's been a lifesaver for us.
Okay, I can see that, and I mean, because I was just Googling PDFs, and that's the best I could do. But mine was 2018, there may be a difference, but the way I'm reading this in the 2018 policy is what it says. But I'm still concerned. A couple of the department heads that I contacted, some people didn't email me back, but a couple who did, told me that they had mostly female employees who were beyond childbearing age. So this wouldn't impact their departments at this time, but they were concerned with the fact that later, as those employees retire, they could be replaced with younger who were utilizing this more than others. And I still worry about the morale of the employees who won't have this opportunity, and they will view this kind of as a discriminatory thing. And in effort of fairness to all employees, treating them all the same, I think that, I mean, I'm with Justice Knight here, that unless we can change that, I can't support in this bill. I still do support the maternity leave. I was all for this until, like I said, before talking about that.
Well, I mean, that's not a maternity leave policy. Okay, we have a vacation and a sick leave policy. This ordinance is an actual maternity leave policy. It's the exact same one that the state of Arkansas legislature passed in 2017 unanimously. Okay. You know, so we're competing against the state right now. My wife keeps her job in large part because of the maternity leave benefit that she gets there. And so I know for a bona fide fact that you do not have to exhaust your vacation and sick leave with the state of Arkansas before you can use the catastrophic leave maternity policy.
Okay, like I said, I Googled the personnel policy and it brought up 2018. That was the latest one I could find. So I can see that if you got one from 2020, it may be updated. I can see that. I'm still concerned that other employees who are beyond childbearing years, whose spouse may get ill and they may still want to take a vacation to Jamaica or something like that, they don't get that opportunity because they had to use all of their leave when their spouse was ill and they had to take it.
Right, I've heard that concern from some folks. And I'll just say that, maternity leave is different. Having a child is different. I think that this policy encourages families. This is a pro-family policy. This policy supports mothers in the workforce. And yes, it is an exception that some employees may not get, but their catastrophic leave policy, as they've had it for years, I do not believe will change, whatsoever. Everyone that I've spoken to, with the exception of one county employee, was in strong support of this. Department heads in courts, I've heard support from the county clerk, I've heard support from Chrissy Lewis, I've heard support from one of the judges, one of the circuit court judges, Judge Braswell. The library, the roads department, all these department heads reached out to me and said, this is a good idea. So I'm not sure who you guys have spoken with, but I've heard overwhelming support from county employees and department heads on this.
I'm not going to name the ones who voiced their concerns with me because I did not ask them for permission to do that. But I can tell you there were two who voiced the same concerns that Justice Knight, myself, and Justice Rowland have expressed here. And when I first read this, I believed that we didn't have in place any paid maternity leave. That they could. Last month when I first heard this, I did not believe that they could tap the catastrophic leave bank for maternity leave.
If they've exhausted all of their sick and vacation leave,
yes,
just like any other catastrophic issue, yes, they can at that point.
Yes. And I'm all about pro-family.
That defeats the whole purpose of a maternity leave policy to support, mothers and who just born a child.
Well, I'm all about pro-family, and I'm all about maternity leave for these folks, but giving an exceptional benefit to a certain class of people seems to me unfair and even discriminatory against some. And as far as being pro-family and all this, you said it's different for maternity, but I'm telling you, as a person whose 91-year-old mother-in-law lives with him and we take care of her all the time, it may not be as different as you think. And when you get my age and you get in my situation, you may recognize that.
Well, the state implemented the same policy and they haven't had any issues. In fact, I think they've even expanded and grown it because it's been such a winner for them.
Yes, sir. I understand. I just want to voice my concerns, and I just want to let you know, unless we can do that, I can't support it in full.
All right, that's okay. Any other comment from the committee or from other court members?
Yeah, Matt Brown.
Go ahead, Justice Brown.
I think I would echo the concerns raised by Justice Knight, Justice Rowland, Justice Allison. I won't rehash those, I won't beat a dead horse, but two concerns I have with the ordinance as written that I haven't really heard addressed yet is, number one, the definition of maternity purposes, I'm concerned, says an eligible female employee may receive the leave after birth of the employee's biological child or placement in an adoptive child in the parent employee's home. My first concern is the term biological. To me, biological would mean some sort of genetic relationship. Well, what if we have an employee who used reproductive assistance technology? Perhaps it's a surrogate egg that's their kid. I don't know that technically it would be covered by this, even though I don't think that's the intent. And we should never, in a million years, in any way get in anybody's business like that. That's none of our business at all. But that's one concern I have right there, is the use of the word biological. My second concern is I assume that the intent of the ordinance is to promote that first few weeks of a newborn child's life, that bonding, to spend time, the baby requires 24-hour care to bond with the baby. And so I think it's logical that we have in here about placement of an adoptive child, because it's not the act of giving birth, it's bringing the baby home. But what if, I'm concerned by the fact that the definition limits this to only female employees. What about a male employee that adopts a child? What if we had a gay male couple that adopted a child and had a newborn? They wouldn't be covered by this. So I'm very concerned that this ordinance, though, has good intentions. I mean, as written, it's discriminatory because it only applies to female employees. I recognize, regardless of what people want to try to identify as nowadays, only a biological female can have a baby. So that part makes sense. But adoption can be anybody. And so I am concerned about that. And I would reiterate the concerns Justice Rowland, Justice Allison, Justice Knight, but I think as a threshold level, we would need to fix those definitions to see, you know, what is it we're intending here, and make sure we're not discriminating against someone on account of gender or anything like that.
Well, you know, if anybody on the committee wanted to entertain, you know, an idea to, you know, look, again, the language is copied verbatim from the state policy. And they haven't had any lawsuits brought before them that I'm aware of with regard to discriminatory practices. But if the committee, you know, wanted to actually move this idea forward, which doesn't sound like they do, but if they did, and they wanted to entertain an amendment to, you know, add in males for adoption purposes, you know, I'm certainly open to that idea.
I've got a question for Councilor Murphy. I've heard several justices now talking about the discriminatory concern. I've heard it from several county employees and the like of official. Councilor Murphy, do you have any concerns about the way this ordinance is worded being discriminatory, or opening us up as a county for potential lawsuits due to the verbiage issues?
I do have concerns specifically as it relates to maternity leave being tied to both the birthing of the child as well as the adoption, just as Justice Brown stated, or similar to what Justice Brown stated. The issue becomes if there's not a similar paternity leave for fathers that is granted, then I believe that the ordinance could be deemed discriminatory. If there was an amendment to either delete the provision regarding adoption or to add an equal provision about adoption for fathers, then I think that would alleviate most of my concerns about discrimination.
Just follow up, Counselor. So just to be clear, you're concerned with it with regards to the adoption part. Is that correct?
Well, correct. The fact that it includes adoption, that doesn't, because of that, it doesn't tie into a medical disability. And
right.
Just from a legal perspective, I think there have been a couple of lawsuits out there that have been pretty sizable. I know there's one involving Chase Manhattan that was a large class action lawsuit that was settled within the last year or two, involving this very issue of requiring basically equal time off for fathers than what was given to mothers. So when we talk about adoption, there's not a physical ailment or medical reason. We're just talking about the relationship between a parent and child. And so if we're talking about the relationship, then we need to make sure that that is equal to both the mother and the father.
Okay, so do you think if the language was struck from the ordinance with regard to the placement of an adopted child, would there be any issues at that point that you would see?
Well, the only remaining issue then is the idea of FMLA running concurrently with maternity leave, because then you sort of muddy the waters in that a person may be eligible for FMLA benefits but wouldn't be eligible for maternity leave benefits. So you would deal with the discrimination issue by deleting the adoption provision, but you would create perhaps other hurdles in having to distinguish between what's FMLA time and then what is time allowable under this ordinance, and that wouldn't necessarily always run concurrently, or it wouldn't be the same.
Okay, I'm not sure I follow you entirely. Can you just try it again?
Yep, sure. So if you were to delete the adoption portion, you're in a much better place in regards to discrimination. So you kind of take that off the table. That won't be an issue. But the issue then becomes just a matter of one, record keeping, and two, letting employees understand what their benefits actually are. And the problem is, a person will still be eligible for FMLA benefits, whether they give birth to a child or if they adopt a child. And that's true for both men and women. That FMLA coverage would be intact. So you would just have a small issue of employees understanding that, yes, you still get FMLA coverage, but you wouldn't be eligible for catastrophic leave under this policy.
Are there other circumstances in which, an employee might be eligible for FMLA leave, but not for something like this? I'm not seeing why it would be an issue personally.
Once again, I don't think this is a legal issue as much as it is just a matter of just keeping up with HR and trying to delineate. Overall, the biggest issue is the equal treatment of men and women, and so if we delete that provision regarding adoption, you would suffice that legal hurdle. That's the biggest one to worry about. The other is just a logistical issue within HR.
Well, we're just talking about legal matters here. We're not really dealing with HR and record keeping. So, I would entertain an amendment to make this a stronger ordinance, to modify Section C, Part 2, the definition of maternity purposes, to either strike the adoption portion or add in to make males eligible for the adoption portion as well. If anybody in the committee,
Mr. Chair, this is Justice Higgins.
to neither of those. Justice Higgins, I think I heard you.
Yes, I would like to speak against removing the adoption part. I've been relatively silent on the rest of the debate. I'm a strong pro-life believer, and I believe that families that are willing to adopt young people need every advantage that they can so that we can help these people. It just so happens I have 2 adopted grandchildren that were adopted when they were very young, one a newborn, and my children that adopted these, really needed every available opportunity to deal with these newborn children as biological parents would. So I would be strongly against removing the adoption verbiage.
Noted. Thank you, Justice Higgins.
So we heard from
just a moment. I heard this is Knight. Go ahead, this is Knight.
Yes, sir. We are doing our due diligence here. We're trying to work through this, and it's tough. It's difficult. We're trying to, put a square peg or a round hole and do our best. But what if we really looked at and maybe redefined the catastrophic leave bank and allowed for maternity leave to pull from it, but also allowed for, if a man or an older woman just needed to use leave from that, if they had, they had their appendix removed or broke their leg on doing something, or needed to be out for 2 weeks, but gave them the opportunity to pull from that before they had to use their own. That might be something I could get behind if we redefined it. I know you pull more from it, but again, my main concern was the unknown of, if we change this, how many employees would stop giving to it or stop donating as much time to it. That's my biggest, hurdle at this point.
And then somebody else was speaking, but I couldn't make out who it was.
Yeah, this is Justice Kendrick. So now that we've heard from 2 attorneys, one's a justice on the court, the other one is our attorney for the court. It sounds like there are some legal concerns. We're definitely giving this issue its due diligence. It might be best, Justice Pearson, if you take your ordinance and work it out with Phil, and then provide us a clean copy of what he is good with legally and what cleans this up, and then bring it back next month to hear this so we can look at it and see what's been changed. But we've now heard from multiple attorneys that have issues with the verbiage.
Noted. Any other members of the quorum court like to speak on the ordinance?
How about someone from the audience?
I'm getting there. Okay, I'm going to open it up to members of the audience. I heard somebody in the room. Miss Gregory, go ahead.
Hi.
And if you could, Miss Gregory, if you could please come closer to the laptop at the front of the room.
Is that here? This laptop's, is this where it is? this full, ordinance or what the, regulations are right now, but I'm gonna speak up for the fathers. We had 4 children. Bob took off time each time I had a child. And that's bonding. I heard that from someone else, bonding. So I'm thinking if a woman employee is going to not have to use her personal leave time, then a father, even though his wife might not work for the county, he also ought to get some benefit like this too. Because in this day and age, that bonding is very important. It's not only important to the baby, it's important to the husband and wife, the man and wife together. And you know what I mean, the father and the mother. Thank you, that's my input.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room that would like to speak on the ordinance?
I would.
Justice Pearson?
Yes.
Hi, this is Angie Wood, the Sheriff's Office. I'm not in the room, but I'm watching via Zoom. And one thing that I have come to learn doing the job here is that the cat leave bank, it is very beneficial for our employees to be able to request donation from. And we actually just had a meeting today for one of our employees to get additional hours because she is on maternity leave. She is exhausted. She will exhaust all of her time before her return. And that request was approved today, so it is helping her out. She did not get those hours before she used her own, but she will be using all of her own, and then she also had fellow employees donate into her some sick hours as well. And so I can see where the cat leave bank has been very beneficial for employees. I've had all 3 of our children while working here at the Sheriff's Office, and I did not request cat leave during that time. I had employees donate to me, and I saved my time knowing that I was going to be having a baby to cover when I was going to be off work. My point that I would like to make, and I know you did a really well presentation on how many hours are still in the bank and are not getting used and are going around in a circle every year, but those are just hours. There's no monetary value when an employee donates those to the cat leave bank. That does not have any donation of money actually attached to them. So when we have an employee off work and for whatever reason, if they're using their own sick time or vacation time or holiday time, or if they are given donation of cat leave sick hours, they're still paid out of their position line item. And it's not giving the department any extra money if we needed to hire somebody temporarily to fill their position or anything like that. They're still paid out of that position that they would have been paid out of if they were still here working. So the fact that there's an abundance of hours there, I don't see as a very strong point, as much as if we want to just give this to our employees as a benefit. I agree with the other members of the court and the audience member. I think that anybody that is a parental right to a child that is new to the home should have this benefit. It shouldn't only be the mother or however you want to word it. I think it's beneficial for the 2 parents to be there and have that access as well. So I would shy away from wanting to approve this for only a mother that is employed by the county. We've had males within our department that take off for FMLA to stay at home with their wives when they've had babies. And so I would say that needs to be included if this is approved. But I think the fact that we're talking about how many hours are there is not as strong of a point as it should be because there's no money attached to them.
Thank you, Angie. And I'll just say that, in my job, I'm afforded the luxury, the benefit, rather, of 6 weeks paid maternity leave. And I would love to see this policy pass into the ordinance and be expanded upon. If it runs for a few years and we realize it's working, I would love to see it be expanded to males as well, because it's been incredibly helpful to me and my family, to be able to have that leave afforded to the father as well. So thank you for your comment. And, I think Jack Woolley, or Jack Sokolaro would like to speak next.
Yes, first of all, employees get or accrue 5 hours a month of vacation and sick. So anyone who knew that they were gonna have a baby would be able to accrue over a week's worth of time in vacation, same amount in sick. So they'd have 2 weeks available if they chose. Once again, having the baby being a choice. But the other part of it is that there are people who get sick, and I'm going to talk about that from personal experience, who spend a lot of their time on their back, and they collect out of the bank because they put into the bank. They have to expend all of their time before they're eligible for it, and that's a situation they have no control over. Now, your proposal is that an individual who has some control, they choose to have a baby or they choose to adopt, then gets to not only have that baby, which is a wonderful thing, but they also don't have to use their vacation. I think that that's a prejudicial act by you in this motion or in this ordinance that says that if you want to have a baby, you're a favored person, you're a favored group. I don't think it's right. I think that the policy as it stands right now that says that when you use up all of your vacation and all of your sick, you're eligible for this fund is the perfect way to go forward. If you want to do anything, include fathers into it. Because whether you adopt or not, the father is as important as the mother to that baby. And if you don't include the father, you're only going halfway. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public that'd like to speak on the ordinance?
I think there's one more.
I'm John McGraw. I'm the director of the Faulkner County Library, and I've gotten a lot of opinions from my staff about this topic. We've had 4 people in the last 3 years deliver children at the library, and they have, in each case, just been able to accrue enough leave by literally coming to work sick sometimes and getting donations from their co-workers. Essentially, somebody starting at the library today would have to have 15 months of no vacations, no sick days, in order to cover 6 weeks with a child. I think all of the staff members who have delivered have received multiple donations of leave from other employees, and that's been fantastic. But that's a luxury that you can not really count on. You don't really know that that's coming in. You can ask for donations, of course, but that's no guarantee you're going to get them. A leave policy like this would be a huge benefit to the people at the library, overwhelmingly female, but I would also ask that this be included for fathers. When I was with the Pulaski County Library, I was lucky enough to be able to squirrel away 8 weeks of leave to be with my son when he was born, and it was something I really needed, and he really needed at the time. Also, I would also point out that the people at the library who were signed up for catastrophic leave, there's almost no overlap with the people who have delivered children. If you expanded this to allow for mothers and fathers, you would get more enrollees in the catastrophic leave pool. We had one mother who had some complications after her child was born. She realized she wasn't in the catastrophic leave pool when she really needed it, and she eventually had to leave us because she simply didn't have any leave and needed to address her health issues. This would be a tremendous benefit if it could be extended to mothers, to families, to fathers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, hearing no other discussion from the committee, other board members, or the public, what is the committee's pleasure with the ordinance? I'm happy to table it until further meetings so I can work on some of the issues that were brought up during this meeting to try to make it a stronger ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we table the ordinance to allow you and others to modify the ordinance pursuant to the comments that you've heard tonight.
I have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Or any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, like to say aye. Hearing none, the ordinance is tabled. The next item on the agenda, I don't have the exact ordinance number, but Justice Boyer, would you like to present your ordinance? Or, I need a motion to introduce the ordinance first.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I hear a motion and a second, but Justice Boyer, would you like to explain your ordinance?
Thank you, Chairman Pearson. In the personnel manual, we need to do a little bit of housekeeping from the section concerning family and medical leave policy, Part C. And I think everybody has a copy of the ordinance, but I'll go ahead and read. The current policy states that 12 weeks of unpaid leave, the county will grant up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave per year to employees who need to care for family members. That portion I'm proposing we delete and replace with paragraph C to be 12 weeks unpaid leave. The county will grant up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave per calendar year, beginning January the 1st and ending on December the 1st, to employees who qualify for medical leave pursuant to the Family Medical Leave Act. Chairman, what this does, it puts into context the time frame for a period of time for the unpaid leave to be utilized, and it starts being at the first of the year instead of just being any part of the year from start to finish. We have designated a beginning of start to finish for this, and it also allows the possibility of an employee to begin a 12 weeks of unpaid leave on December in a calendar year. Obviously, the employee wouldn't get the 12 weeks starting in December of that calendar year, but when the new calendar year rolls over, the calendar year would be a beginning for another 12-week period, up to 12-week period for that calendar week. If the employee was to use the entirety of the leave during the first part of the new calendar year, the 12 weeks, then they would no longer be eligible for any unpaid leave throughout the balance of that calendar year. That's it in a nutshell, sir.
Thank you, Justice Boyer. Any discussion from other members of the committee? Hearing none. Any discussion from other court members in attendance? Hearing none. Any discussion from the public? Hearing none. What is the pleasure of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I move that proposed ordinance 21-10 be advanced to the full court for its consideration.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. And the ayes have it. Justice Boyer, your ordinance is advanced to the full court. And that is it for the committee. I do have one announcement. For any department heads in attendance, I will send out an email reminder, but there is a May deadline for requests for any personnel raises by county ordinance to get that in by May or by September. So we are coming up on May. I will send an email out to department heads reminding them of this, so that hopefully we can get these taken care of in a more timely manner. Any other comments from the committee? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Motion and a second, committee is adjourned.
Are you gonna talk about the new update on the flood program?
I don't want to make it the shot.
Yes. I've got one.
To 12:30, 8:30.
All right, we're gonna settle in for courts and public safety as soon as the recorder's ready.
I'm ready.
All right, we'll call courts and public safety meeting in order. Now, let me just do a quick roll call. So I see Justice Moss is here, Justice Lahowski, Justice Schock, are you here?
Is your speaker on?
Let's try that. Is Justice Schock here? Justice Rowland. I think I heard Justice Rowland. Justice
Yes, I'm
Rowland.
here.
There we go. All right, thank you. All right. So, just one more time. Not hearing Justice Schock.
He was on there.
Okay,
Yes, I'm
Justice.
here.
All right, very good, Justice Schock. Thank you. All right, so those that are here have a hard copy of the agenda, and those that are not here should have received it on in an email. So should have all of the information. I think the first discussion that we're going to have is an update on the courts, fines, and fees collection. Also not on the agenda, but I did mention it at the last meeting, and I just omitted it. We're also going to talk about the Spay and Neuter program. Councilor Murphy, let's go ahead and talk about court fines and fees. Are you prepared for that, sir?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Thank you.
So to begin with, a total of 5,696 past due payments were submitted to the Department of Finance and Administration last year. That totaled a debt upload of $469.24. So about $15.5 million that was uploaded to DF&A. Of those 5,696 letters, only a handful were returned, and only a handful asked for hearings. Those hearings before Judge Baker were had last month. Since we've sent out those letters, there's been past due payments made of approximately $118,000 from November through April of this year. We began last month receiving the disbursement from DF&A. Our first disbursement for the month of February was incredibly small, less than $1, but in March we had $20,452 from DF&A state income tax withholdings, garnishments. So total, we have collected $139,000 through this program. That's where we're at. I'd have to also give a lot of credit to Ms. Ashley West, who serves as a legal assistant to Faulkner County, and she's been the one that's working with Angie and the sheriff's department as well, and they've worked a lot of hours, long and hard, dealing with a lot of irate customers, if you will, and dealing with a lot of just logistics and phone calls, and they've done a great job putting this program together.
Okay, so $139,000, and I believe when we had talked earlier, just before we start the program, Craighead County, which is working this, they had brought in about $64,000 their first year, using our trades. So, okay, so that's very good. I was using that a little bit as a litmus test, just to kind of, not that it matters, just to see where we were, since they are also a Class 6 county.
Sure, and if we're judging or potentially looking forward at ARC-TREX in the future, I believe one of the things, I'm going off the top of my head here, but I think they charge $2 per letter. We were able to send out those letters for about 50 cents per letter mailed. So that was, in essence, $1.50 per debtor saving.
Times 5,696?
That's right. Okay. So that was another thing that Ms. West was able to bid out or find the cheapest vendor and save quite a bit of money on the front end for that. We don't need anything at this point. However, there may become a time where we accidentally garnish somebody's state income tax return that should not have been garnished. And if that does happen, we'll come before this court and need a new appropriation. But as of right now, any errors or mistakes that have been made, we've been able to take care of within DF&A. So before that money's been dispersed to Faulkner County.
So you may or may not have numbers to put with this, but have there been any additional cleanup that you can talk to anecdotally, as far as we talked earlier about some of these people may be out of state, some of them may be deceased, anything like that you've run across?
So part of the problem is we don't know what we don't know, and so we have a certain amount of returned addresses or letters that were returned to us, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not filing a state income tax return. So it's hard to take those off the list. And as far as deceased goes, we don't really have a database that we can just tap into to show us who is and who isn't deceased. Now, we can use some common sense, and maybe in the future that's what we need to do, in the sense of limiting the debtor to a certain age group, because we know that once people generally are over the age of 70, they're much less likely to file a request for a state income tax refund. So that would limit the number of debtors, but it's really difficult to know of the 5,696, how many are living and how many are not. How many are in the state of Arkansas still and how many are not. It requires substantial amount more of money and manpower to figure all of that out.
Okay, so again, just so I'm clear, so of the 5,696 letters, 15,469 came in and paid, and then 139,000 actually came through DF&A?
No, those that came and paid is 118,558.
Okay.
DF&A is only at 20,500 right now.
Okay. All right, very good.
And I suspect we'll have another substantial, over 10,000 would be my guess, from DF&A this month, just because people are still filing their income tax returns and DF&A is a little bit behind. They're still getting to those figures, but we had an individual come in last month, and Ms. Foley, if she's still on, may know more about this, but my understanding is paid a substantial outstanding fine that was, I'm going to say, $12,000, and she paid it off. And most of that was restitution. I think $10,000 of that was restitution payment. And shoot, for that single payment alone, I think this program has been a success. Just from that one defendant being able to have something that they probably would not have had ordinarily.
So that leads me to my next question, and I'm gonna assume you may not know the answer, but do we know where this money was allocated to?
That's a good question. I don't have that answer off the top of my head. I think the best thing to do is maybe allow us some time to kind of see where the money comes from and then how it goes to, and we can have that at a later time to show a little better about the net benefit to the county in various sources.
Right, so to be clear, it's some of it, obviously was restitution, as you alluded to, some of it could have gone to the sheriff's department, some of it went to the public defender, some of it went to the various specialty courts. A check for $139,000 wasn't written to the sheriff's office.
It was not written to the sheriff's office. It wasn't written to county general. It's divided up in a dozen different ways.
Okay. Very good. Any questions for Councilor Murphy? Justice Wachowski.
Councilor Murphy, I got two. One was your first number, the amount that was initially uploaded. You said $15.5 million?
$15,469,024.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then my second one is not a question but a comment. I really appreciate the fact that we had this problem and it was brought before the court and your team stepped up, you and Mrs. West and Mrs. Woolley, and raised your hand and said, we'll do this. And it looks like you knocked it out of the park, and that it sounds like it's been a huge benefit, like Stephen just said, not just to this county and to the money that we look at in this county, but to the community and defendants and everything else as well. So I just appreciate the work to help them.
I appreciate that. And I would also say, I don't think that what we did this year is necessarily going to be mirrored for years to come. I would be hesitant to say that next year at the same time, in the same 4-month time frame, that we would have that same money. A lot of the defendants simply either did not know they owed the debt, or paid because they were worried about their income tax return. And honestly, state income tax returns are pretty small in comparison to the federal tax return. We would much rather have the ability to attach it to certain federal money that came out last year, but we can't touch that. And so I think a lot of people were worried, though. A lot of defendants thought that what we were doing was attaching or garnishing money from the federal, so it made them even more apt to pay. Secondly, the fact that that federal money did come in, I think that also gave a little more expendable income to maybe certain individuals that may not have had it otherwise. So if this program were to happen again next year, I would just temper our expectations maybe a little bit with the financial figures probably won't mirror exactly what we're receiving here.
All right, very good. I'm actually a little more excited than that because I heard a report from Craighead County at a meeting this weekend, and their second year actually exceeded their first year. So high benchmark for you. No, but we appreciate the feedback. All right, any other questions from committee members? Okay, very good. Thank you for that report. We'll move on. Let's go ahead and move on to the Spay and Neuter program and get an update from you. So we have the report. I see that. So this looks like it's from the first quarter for 2021. Hopefully, actually, I'm not sure if the members remote have a copy of this. Let me ask Justice Rowland, do you have a copy of the Spay and Neuter report for the first quarter of 2021?
No, I do not.
I know it went out in an email and it's on the website.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I have it.
All right, very good. We'll use that as an example that you guys do have that. So the numbers are before us. I'll ask any committee members after reviewing the numbers, do you have any questions, comments, feedback regarding this? While you're thinking about that, one thing that I'll do when we look at the, and I'll read off some of the high points of the numbers here for those that don't have a copy of the report. So we have so this is a report for January, February, and March. So the number of dogs that have been spayed are 64. Of the 64, those that had owners were 54. And let me see if I'm looking at that. That's a long way across there. Excuse me just a moment. No, that's not the number there. So, here we go. All right, so the number of dogs that were spayed, the ones that were owned, had owners were 64. Those that were rescue animals were 54. And of those dogs, 74 of them also received rabies vaccine. Am I reading that correctly, Counselor? Looks like there's not a total for the number of dogs spayed.
I believe that's correct, yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So when we look at, so that's spayed, so when we look at dogs neutered, the number that had owners were 37, rescue animals were 57, and then of those, 65 of them were also rabies vaccinated. Cats, so it looks like we did have total for, no, there we go. Cats, there we go. Numbers of cats spayed that had owners is 92, rescue animals 28, an additional 8, and then 86 of those were rabies vaccinated. Cats that were neutered that had owners was 66, rescue animals were 17, and 52 of those were vaccinated. So we look at the grand total, and now I see the total down here on the right hand. So the total of female dogs that were sterilized, 118, male dogs were 94, female cats 120, male cats 83, for a grand total for 3 months of 415. So for those that were around at the time when we were implementing this program, and you look at the multiplication table of how many dogs and cats are in a litter and how many litters they can potentially have, and it would grow that one pair of stray animals over a period of a short period of time of a year or two, how many different animals that would expand to. If you multiply that times 415, it would reason to believe that 415 has a pretty significant impact, probably in the thousands of stray animals that we don't currently have because of this program. So that's probably an editorial comment on my part, just from previous discussions. One thing that I did want to note also is when you look at the sterilizations by zip code, it shows the zip codes and where these were coming from, because they track these. I looked these up earlier. The one with the most, zip code 72032, that is Conway east of I-40 that stretches all the way to the Bologna city limits. So there's that stretch before you get to Bologna. So 122 of the 415 came from that part of Faulkner County. Zip code 72033, 40, and that's actually Conway. So that's pretty much the city limits of Conway, internally part of Conway. So 40 came from Conway. 72034, that's mainly West Conway. The majority of that is in the city limits of West Conway, and then a little bit of the outskirts, out towards Raleigh, and then a little bit south, outside towards Mayflower, but just a little bit outside the city limits. 72058 is my hometown of Greenbrier. Looks like 86 came from the Greenbrier area, not just the city limits. I live outside the city limits, and that's my zip code. Horseshoe Mountain, the surrounding area. 72106, 19 came from that area. That's mainly Mayflower. 11 came from 72111. That's the Mount Vernon area. So it's interesting that we have 11 come from that far out in the county. And then 72173, just south, I believe that's Bologna.
Yes, sir.
So we had 39 from the Bologna community. And then I didn't even look up 72131, that's 7 animals. You might know what that zip code is? 72131, I didn't look it up. It could be. Equipment, okay. And then 72039 had 5 animals.
That's Damascus.
Damascus, okay, so again, those remote areas. So after hearing those numbers, any questions or comments from the committee regarding the spay and neuter program? Okay, very good, Counselor. Thank you for the numbers. hopefully we can, I think a quarterly update, is that inconceivable?
It's not inconceivable.
Okay, I don't want to create a burden, is what I'm getting at, but I do think, we probably in the past, we've looked at it once a year. I think on a quarterly basis, that way we can keep it at the forefront and see if that's possible.
And to be clear, are you talking about spay and neuter, or are we talking about fines and fees?
I'm right now talking spay and neuter.
No problem.
Okay. All right, moving on. Next item on the agenda is the proposed resolution for the Faulkner County Hazard Mitigation Plan. So there's a number of documents that were included in this, and the reason for that is I want to give you a little bit of a background on it. So if you look at your list, the resolution that we're going to be presenting is draft resolution 21-02. There's a copy of that in your packet. There's also a previous resolution, mitigation resolution 0810. And the reason I included this is just to show that about every 5 years we review the mitigation hazard plan. It's updated in the quorum court. Supplies a resolution to approve that. So 0810 is just to show that we have done this in the past, and also resolution 15-10 shows that we have done this. Attached also is the mitigation plan letter that was addressed to Judge Baker that announces that the mitigation plan has been updated for Faulkner County and all jurisdictions within its borders and has been approved by FEMA pending its adoption, meaning the adoption of it, including us. This means that to be officially part of the plan, each jurisdiction must adopt the attached resolution, and a copy of the plan is available for review at the website mentioned here. I included the link to the website when we sent out the agenda so that you can look at it. I was going to download it, but it was 24 megabytes, so it was too big to include in an email, I believe. I don't remember how many pages it was, but it was a lot. I think it was over 100 pages, if I remember correctly. I have seen the plan before, and I went through them and reviewed the plan again just as a reminder for me. Hopefully those who had not ever seen the plan, had a chance to look at it. So the business for tonight, so that we can go ahead and put it in play, is I would entertain a motion that we approve resolution 21-02, and then we can start the discussion.
Motion to approve resolution 21-02.
And a second from Justice Moss. Okay. All right. So it's on the table. So are there any questions or comments that we need to field regarding the mitigation resolution? Okay, no comments from the committee. Any comments from quorum court members not on the committee? Any comments at all? Okay. Very good. Then, so not having any comments, I'll assume that we have enough information to make a decision on this and forward it to the full court. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and call the roll since we have some that are remote on it, so we can do that. So for or against moving this to the full court, Justice Moss? Yes. Justice Lahowski?
Yes.
Yes. Justice Schock?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. And Justice Rowland?
Yes.
Yes.
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you, Justice Rowland. Okay, all right, so that we will move that to the full court. I see no other business on the agenda for this committee, so I'll entertain a motion that the Courts of Public Safety adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Higgins, before we adjourn.
Yes, Justice Rowland. Absolutely.
I don't want to put any undue stress or work on you, but you might already have this information that you could put together for me. Could you put together a list of the animal loving groups of Faulkner County with maybe a contact number and name, just so that we have it, each of the members of the courts have it? I know some of them are on Facebook.
Yes, I know some off the top of my head. Let me work on that, Justice Rowland.
It's not any rush. It's just something I'd like to have, for informational purposes, to identify, people when they call me. So, trying to get familiar with them.
No, that's very fair, and I'll go through my email log. I receive emails from various times from them, and that might be a place for me to start. But I'll see what I can accumulate.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn right quick before she asks me another question. No, I'm kidding. All right, so we have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Do we have a
adjourn.
second? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you very much. Yeah. How are you, Justice?
Yeah, careful.
I'm gonna let y'all have the capital. Yes, sir.
Office, am I right? Come in. Call them, so I sit there and make summer on that. And you got your blanket,
My classroom, some days it'll be fire hot, some days it'll be freezing cold. And still got kids, you gotta learn to do it, get by.
Do you have any control over your thermostat, or is it?
I do, but sometimes infrastructure in schools is not like that.
I know Casey, she's teaching all the last, Norway. It's not a problem, she's got a thermostat, but sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't.
That's what ours is, and I mean, I was supposed to be when these fancy ones that control yourself, the timers and all that stuff. I couldn't hear the morning, sometimes it'll feel like a
I put it in the stack over there, for the road department.
Oh, okay.
You give us a second to hand that out.
Yeah, I know.
You hit now?
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You have to build in a 5-minute break with school, we change classes.
It always does.
I thought there was like a water cooler. I guess they took it away like we did Fort up here back then.
I'll say, I don't recall a water cooler in a long
I
time.
used to. They had, you could sneak in the jury room and get some.
Well, how many juries?
I said, but they didn't know juries there for
Yeah,
like
they
5
had
years.
juries a long time, so the water cooler went out with the jury.
I'll be some nasty water going on.
I would drink it out of the water cooler in this building, I'll just say. It's yellow, a lot.
Yeah, I got it.
Well, if it's going in the water.
Ready? Call the budget and finance, or infrastructure committee to order. Can y'all hear me?
No. One more time. I'll try
About
that.
now.
Try that.
How about this one? Hey.
It's better two lawyers trying to fix it.
Is it ironic that it quit working when the infrastructure committee starts? Call the infrastructure committee meeting to order. I'd like to begin by calling the roll. Justice Allison. Here. Justice Knight.
Here.
Justice Moss.
Here.
Justice Strain.
Here.
All right. Gentlemen, I made a mistake in the agenda. I guess I had this under new business, but I think where we left off last time, Justice Strain, you had taken a look at winter weather issues. I think you wanted to report back to the committee, or am I misremembering?
Well, does this one work? All right. Everyone's always talking to me about not being loud enough. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Well, actually, what I did was I contacted Mark Ledbetter about getting some more information on the roads and equipment that we have for the county and the road department, and I sent a message to him on April the 12th, and hadn't received anything from him. I texted him on April the 8th, and he responded pretty promptly and sent us some pretty good reports that, for the infrastructure committee, and there's some of those copies up there if you guys would look for them or would like to look at them, but I don't have enough to hand out to everyone that's here. Another thing I'd like to point out is I did get a visit with Judge Baker, and he had a list of the roads that are covered by the county and the authority under which they were put on the county road maintained by the county. Our county attorney, Phil Murphy, for the members, all the members of the court, I think, is that correct?
Yes,
Counsel?
sir. Yes, sir.
He printed out some full-size maps, so if anybody really wants to wait around that long after the meeting, then I can roll a couple of these out and let you look at them, what he has supplied to us.
I actually have extra. I brought them in case y'all, you want your own Faulkner County map.
They're pretty good. And they actually have one in the county judge's office too, if I can find it here. It was a really nice map. It's not as detailed as the one, obviously, that the counselor has provided for us, but they're pretty nice. It's in the judge's office, so we were really happy to find those. So anyway, this lists all the county roads, the total mileage, and the miles in the county. So there's a little bit of information there, quite a bit more than I think we've had available in the past. What I really would like to end up getting, or the infrastructure to gain, is we'd like to have some information. I'm not sure where we're going to find that, if we're going to have to round it up or on our own. But we'd like to have surface types, the condition of the road on a spreadsheet. I've actually kind of started trying to put something together myself for that. We'd like to have weight limits for the roads and the bridges. And obvious reason for that is that we've got industry. And one thing I was looking at today was like Lolly Road that comes off of 89 going down to the river. There's a lot of industry down there around the airport, sand and gravel companies, and what's the weight limit on those roads? We don't really know. And the roads are not very good condition. There's a lot of farm down there, and a lot of farms and farming going on, so there's a lot of heavy trucks going in and out of there, and quite frankly, even 89 is not in the best of conditions, so I'm hoping we can kind of push that through a little bit better. So another thing that I wanted to bring up is a county road improvement plan. The state has a county, or not a county, but they have a state road. They have a 5, 10, and a 20-year plan. And I think it would be beneficial for our county to develop a plan. What do we want our roads to look like? And here's the thing I would really like to see is maybe some improvement, especially I mentioned before that we need some good north and south and east and west routes, because if you go to places around the country that have a thriving economic system, they have good roads, and I think that's one of the best things that we could do for our citizens. Is there's a lot of home-based businesses where people are working out of their shops or their garages. A lot of the big businesses in this country started there in people's garages, and I think the best thing we could do, not just to support our entrepreneurs and our businessmen, is to provide them with good roads so they can get their products in and out and get, and that's going to help our tax base too. We're always talking about the possibility of raising taxes for this or that or the other thing. I think the best way for us to increase revenue is to improve our tax base, help our citizens be prosperous, and we're going to have more money in the county. So that's kind of what I'm looking for there, or hoping for. But in order to do that, I wanted to, you know, I'm not sure if that should be an action item for the county to come up with a plan, or if, I mean, for the infrastructure committee maybe an action item, or if possibly we need to have a ordinance from go to the quorum court that empowers the infrastructure committee to come up with that plan. And Councilor Murphy, would you have an opinion on what might be best for that?
I guess I'm not sure, Justice Strang, what your purpose is, and if your purpose is to develop a 5-year plan, if that's what you're asking, that's a difficult ordinance to create from a 5-year plan in the sense of the enforcement part of it. And so here we have an issue of our separation of powers, what the quorum court is in constitutionally given as far as power versus what the county judge is given as power. So it depends on what you want to do. If you're just trying to come up with a agreement on what the quorum court believes are important tasks, then that might be something that's better done as a resolution as opposed to an ordinance. So it all depends on what the purpose of underlying intent is from this body.
Thank you. I guess my goal is, obviously, I think everybody in the county would like to see our roads improved. As to who's going to be responsible for that, I guess that's actually what I'm kind of looking towards. Is that something that the county judge is going to do for us, or is that something that he's going to empower the infrastructure committee to do for the county?
Well, I don't think the judge empowers this committee. This committee serves as a separate body from the judge. So I think if this committee had suggestions for roads that should be paved, or roads that need to be improved, or bridges, or whatever it has, those suggestions can be made at any time through a conversation, a letter, or anything else to Judge Baker. But at the end of the day, it is the county judge's decision on which roads get paved or which roads don't get paved. This body, however, gets to choose the funding. And so you get to decide, as a quorum court, the ability to fund or not fund the road department in many ways. So that is an issue that this body can take up, is the funding issue. As far as delineating how the funding is used, that's something that this body is fairly restricted on.
Not necessarily. Justice Strang? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I think we have a comment from the audience. Do you have a comment?
I did. You can actually allocate which roads you want paved if you want to. You have that.
Okay.
Road by road. I thought that the quorum court's job was to only appropriate money, not run the county. I thought that's what we hired at the county judge and then these department heads for. They ask for what they want and y'all appropriate the money if you want to. That's what I thought. And that's actually true, Justice, but you can say we want to pay this road too.
Well, I guess my question is that on the infrastructure committee, I feel like that we don't have a plan. There's no plan in the county. And so I guess really the bottom line, my question is, if we as a quorum court, if we as an infrastructure committee, if I just as a citizen would like to see some kind of a plan, what is this county going to do instead of just going by, Joe Blow in the south part of the county calls because he wants his road paved in front of his house. What are we going to do to make sure that this whole county is managed properly? I guess when we get down to, I don't know, do we have any input in that at all? I think that the public should have an input, and we are here to represent the public. And, so anyway, that's kind of what I would like to see happen. I don't know if I'm going to be successful in that or not. I'm going to be pushing for, however it happens, to get some kind of a plan for the county as to what's this county going to look like as far as our roads go, our infrastructure, 10 years down the road. Are we going to have any input in that, or are we just going to sit around and wait for it to happen or hope it happens? So anyway, I guess that's about the extent of my remarks. Unless, is there any more comments from you?
Comments from the public, Mr. Strang? Hearing that, just Strang, if I am,
I do.
yes, sir.
The first and most foremost thing you're gonna have to do is keep the road tax money where it belongs, so they can have money. It's multi-millions of dollars to redo a road, a paved road, like it should be, and it hold up. They got to have the funds to do it.
Well, I think they've got plenty of funding. I don't think the funding at this point is an issue. They've already.
Not, but in the past, it's been tried to be put in other places, and the discussion, like you said, you can't have any kind of economy without roads, and that is very true. And without economy, you're not gonna have the money to do anything. Road by or
Yeah, then we're back to taxing our citizens because we don't have enough jobs for them.
We've got the tax in place. Just need to keep what it is.
Bob?
Thank you, Justice Strain. I applaud your effort to try to come up with a plan that's visible, that the county citizens have some input on. It's unfortunate there is no plan in place that I'm aware of, that I've seen. We have to work pretty hard to get a map of what's going on. We're getting data month by month, but it's not within the context of what are we doing. One of the things that Faulkner County is blessed with is we're going to have some growth. If you haven't noticed, there's a lot of big subdivisions going in and around this county, and that's going to just really dramatically change things. So having a plan to deal with that would be a good idea, I would think. I think the city of Conway, maybe other cities, but the city of Conway has a plan. The plan is called the Metro Plan. That's sort of a regional plan. That's something that's out there. How does Faulkner County roads, spending about $10 million a year of taxpayer money, how is that $10 million a year going to get spent, given the fact we're going to have growth in this county? What's going to happen? 5-year plan, 4-year plan, 10-year plan? Something has to happen other than reactionary planning, which looks to me like the way it's done. It's done on a reactionary basis. It would be nice. You have to react. That's not a problem. If there's an issue, you have to react. However, we should be able to step back and say, we have to do this reactionary thing right now, but here's the plan. Here's what we're trying to get to. So Mike, I applaud your efforts to try to get some kind of a plan in place that's visible to the citizens of the county.
There's an old saying that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And so I'd like to see us move beyond that somehow. So I guess that's the end of my remarks. Jared?
I've got one remark.
Oh, please, yeah. Sorry.
Again, I agree with everything you've said to this point about planning. I think the one thing that we need to look at is whatever plan is there right now, which doesn't seem to be very well documented, but it seems to be there. In a casual conversation with the road supervisor, he mentioned to me that the snowstorm we had last month basically beat the holy whatever out of the chip seal road. So that says to me that if we were planning to pave roads with chip seal and a weather event like that can destroy it, maybe we need to slow down what we're paving and pave it with a higher quality. Again, I don't know, but paving 10 miles of road chip seal and then having to redo it the next year because you had a snowstorm says to me that maybe we need to look again at not only what we do, but how we do it. And then take the money that's already there and allocate it appropriately.
If I could comment again, I have spent quite a bit of time up north, and And what I've observed is that people up north spend all summer getting ready for winter. And down here, we don't really prepare at all, quite frankly. And I've been back down here long enough to where I found myself falling into that same habit. I had a very difficult time just going to check the antifreeze on my car, where that was kind of a serious issue up north. So I think as far as the ice damage that we had from my discussion with I forgot his name, sorry, the guy that's in charge of the water department in Mayflower, he said that most of the problems they had were broken water lines, and I did get quite a bit of input from other people that had other ideas about what the problem was, but at any rate, he figures that we had about 130 broken water lines because people just weren't prepared for it. They didn't insulate their lines and things like that. We had quite a few issues with the roads in Mayflower, and in the southern part of the county, I don't know of anyone, and I don't want to be negative, I'm sure that the county was out there plowing roads, but from the websites or the Facebook pages that I'm on, I don't know of anyone that saw any plowing equipment in the southern part of the county. And I'm reluctant to say that because I don't want to say anything negative about the road department in particular, but I think that, you know, if we had gotten a list that showed the roads that they did plow, it certainly would have helped to put a lot of those kind of rumors to rest. So I think better communication between the road department and the infrastructure committee, who, you know, is in touch with the people in their communities, would probably help in reducing a lot of those kind of rumors, you know. So I yield back.
Mr. Stern, I had a question about your comments on the 5-year plan. To see if I'm understanding you correctly, I think Mr. Gregory too kind of hit the nail on the head of what I was thinking of. What I'm hearing you say is not in terms of this is something to micromanage, this culvert is replaced, this road is repaved, but more of we have a plan in place to kind of see what we are wanting to try to move towards, kind of like a master street plan that a city would have. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Well, it's that, but also I think like the surface type of spreadsheet thing. If we had a spreadsheet that showed all the roads and the road progress, or the progress that was being made on the roads in the county, and someone that lives down on Lolly Road, if they get in their 80,000-pound truck and they're trying to decide which way to go, then they can look online and see, well, gee, this road is or is not rated for that kind of a load, or maybe that bridge is not. I just like to see a little better information, a little more easily accessible by the public, so that, if their road has a lot of potholes and they can look on a sheet and they say, oh, it's scheduled for maintenance in August, and they can say, well, I can wait, but they know that it's coming. I just think information helps our citizens, it helps them to prepare. It could even have an effect on, where people buy property. If there's a piece of property, but you know that the roads are in poor condition and not much hope of being fixed anytime soon, then you're probably going to look somewhere else for your property. So it just has a lot of impact, and I'd like to see, I think that the citizens of the county would like to know what the overall plan is so they can plan accordingly, really. So that's my take on it. That's what I'm kind of like to see happen.
Any other comments from the committee?
Is it on now? Okay. First, I appreciate you working on this, just trying. I really appreciate these reports because I was thinking we needed something like this. I like the idea of a 5-year plan. I didn't bring my Association of Counties manual, but I think, Counselor, could you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it does state that the county judge's responsibility is the roads. Is that right?
Yes, the county judge is responsible for the roads.
And that's what you meant when you were talking about the separation of powers issues and all that stuff?
That's correct.
Yeah, so I think we could probably support a resolution encouraging the judge to develop this 5-year plan, because any plan to promote growth and in the county and the roads to promote or to incorporate to accommodate that growth, I think would be a great idea. I would also like to take the time to say that, looking at this report, I'd like to make a couple of compliments to the road department. When I look back at the age of some of this equipment, and we're talking dump trucks here, and someone who spent a lot of time in trucks and a lot of time with heavy equipment, I'm pretty impressed that we're able to keep vehicles that are 20 years old on the road. And I think that's a compliment for the road department, foreman, Mr. Ledbetter, and for his employees there, that they're doing a pretty good job of taking care of our equipment. I've been around people, especially with trucks and heavy equipment, that some of that equipment spent more time in maintenance than it did actually working. So I would like to make a compliment for our road department and what they've done here with maintaining this equipment and keeping us from having to invest in new equipment more often than we need to. I took a tour with Mr. Turner not long ago, and we toured some of the roads. And I'm a person who grew up in Arkansas and spent a lot of time on dirt roads and roads that were really wrecked and stuff. And I would like to also say that as far as the county roads in my part of the county, I'm pretty impressed with what it was, but I come from a time when everything we have is dirt pretty much. And I do know that some family members in some other counties that their roads are not quite as well kept as ours. So I would like to say that I believe that the road department does a good job, but I appreciate what you're saying, and I do think that information and accountability to the public. So, I mean, I could go along with this if we put together a resolution that encouraged the judge to develop this plan just for transparency's sake and for more information being made available. I don't think, and the counselor can correct me wrong, I don't think we have the authority to mandate the judge run the road department anyway, except for, as Judge Klein said, through the appropriations where we can say this money can be spent on this or this money can be spent on that. That's just the way I understand it, and as a novice JP, I may be misinformed on some of that.
Any other comments? Hearing none, anything from the public? Oh, I'm sorry. Justice Pickett.
It's interesting, but 5-year plans originated right after the 1917 revolution in Russia. They began their 5-year plans. First, remember that if you're talking about a 5-year plan, we budget for 1 year. It's impossible to budget for a 4 or 5 or 10-year plan. The second is that the judge's working budgets are changed about 2 or 3 times a year because of weather-related incidents. So a 5-year plan would be going through constant revisions, primarily based on weather, and the big snowstorm in February is a good example. So be careful about thinking about, if you have a 5-year plan, you're only going to have a 1-year budget associated with it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll move on to new business then. Speaking of road report, passed out a copy of the road report for March that Mr. Ledbetter prepared for the road department. I also visited with him today by telephone to get some more detail. Typed up some really great notes to relate to y'all and left it on my computer at work. But the gist of what he said is that as we had discussed last month, of course the February ice and snow, or I think more importantly the freezing of the ground, absolutely decimated a lot of chip seal roads out in the county. He did report that they have just about gotten all of the chip seal roads fixed in terms of the base. They're not re-chip sealed yet, but the base is fixed, so they're gravel. He mentioned that if citizens out in the county are curious about why the road paved, he said that this is a long time of year, you gotta let it dry out before they do the chip seal. Which I remember my grandpa when I was a kid telling me never build a road in the winter or the spring. But he said once that dries out in the middle of chip seal, that those are being addressed. He did say that now that they've kind of gotten that behind them, they finally kind of started back to some of the repaving projects. As the report indicated, they've got about 2.7 miles of road were paved last month. 4 culverts were installed. He said currently the county The road department is working on, I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation, Sorry Road between Worcester and Greenbrier. Sorry. And then also, I think, if I remember correctly, he said they're just about to start on Cedar Glade Loop as well. So that should be coming in the next few weeks, but that's where we're at. I had visited with Ledbetter as well and with Judge Baker, and as soon as I get some free time, I'd like to go down and kind of take a tour of the road department, visit with folks and kind of get an idea of what their needs are and kind of what the wish list, so to speak, is in terms of future projects and things. And they were both very encouraging, said, holler at me anytime. And I didn't ask about the other members of the committee, but I can see why they would say no, so I encourage those members of the committee for sure reach out to Mr. Ledbetter and maybe set something up. But he was very interested in kind of showing us what was going on so we have a better handle of what we're dealing with. But any comments on the road report?
I do have a comment. I'd like to respond to Mr. Pettit. Is that I don't think a plan, whether it's 5 or 10 or 20 years, is we're not trying to dictate to anyone what to do. But I think, we're all adults. We should be able to sit down and discuss or think about where we want the roads in this county to be in 10 years. And as far as a penalty, I'm certainly aware that things change. I've been around a few years. I know things change, and usually at the most inconvenient times. But the fact is that we should be thinking about what we would like the roads to look like, 5 or 10 years from now. I'm not saying we shouldn't have input from the highway road department. They might actually already have a plan, but so certainly, I don't like the reference to the Soviet Union. I don't think having a plan has anything to do with communism. And I think, free countries in the world also have plans for the roads. Conway is not a communist state or a city, I don't think yet. And so that I don't think was a good reference. But so, thank you.
Moving on, new business meeting broadcast technology issues. Several citizens had reported some issues with being able to see and hear the meetings, especially particular, via Zoom or YouTube or Facebook, however they broadcast. And it was reported to me that might be something, since it's the quorum court, might be within the purview of the infrastructure committee rather than county judge's office. And so I asked Mr. Wade with the IT department if he would speak for just a second, just kind of maybe let us know this is what we have right now in terms of our technology. Maybe just some kind of let us talk back and forth about what are some things, or maybe some options that are out there, kind of a rough idea of what options are available, what they might cost. Keeping in mind, we're not trying to hold any specifics because he doesn't have quotes or anything. Just to give us an idea so we can talk about that as part of an evolving discussion. Mr. Ward? Or Wade, I'm sorry.
So, first off, we kind of just need to know what you guys want from the room, okay? This room is not dedicated to this purpose. At any time, this room can be tore down and used for open enrollment or for other events that occur within the county and then have to be set back up in a moment's notice. So that's one of the bigger problems of this room, is that it's not dedicated for this purpose. The other part is that you guys have your own budget, so you have to let us know what you need or want, and then we can go out and look for and help you to equip this room for what it is. The TV is a new piece of equipment in here that Margaret donated, that with some funds that she got from the election commission or for the election based on a grant. Looks like the old projector over here might have finally given it up. That thing's been here, I think, since I've been here. And I've been here for over 10 years. So you kind of have to let me know what you need out of the room. And then I can come back and I brought in a vendor. All of this audio equipment I brought in, got a couple of quotes. One of the quotes was about $12,000 to equip this room for sound. I think I did it for about $5,000. Each one of those mics is about $160 with the stand and the mic. And if we can get people to use them, they work real well. So you give me the guidance of what you want, what you need. I'll go out, find the resources, maybe bring in a vendor, get you some quotes, get you some information on it. And we can equip this room, but as long as this room is not dedicated to this purpose, it's going to have some issues with how it's used.
Mr. Wade, one question I would have is maybe you could just kind of tell us a little bit more about what we have right now, like in terms of camera and the sound system. How does it work through the internet and stuff like that?
Well, you've got a standard PA system. There's a mixing board back behind the cabinet here. All these cables go into it. A couple of speakers in the corners. Just kind of a standard PA system. The camera is something that really didn't even come out of the Farm Corps budget. That's an IT item. It's just kind of a entry-level piece of equipment that some video bloggers would use to live stream some events and stuff. That setup's less than $1,000, so it's not studio quality type equipment. It's made to be mobile. It's made to set up and tear down. The projector, as you can see, has been here for quite a while, so I couldn't even begin to say what that cost when it was new. A newer projector that would do 4K mounted from the ceiling. Again, I'd bring in a vendor to figure some of that out. You're probably looking at $2,500, $3,000 at a lower level for a decent projector hung from the ceiling, wired down, and made a more permanent installation in the room. Those are kind of the entry-level points to a room. I mean, I've seen some of these conference rooms where they've spent $100,000 easily on audio, video, permanent installations, furniture, and everything else.
The PA system we have, does it tie into the streaming or recording, or is that solely through the microphone?
It's separate. It's a completely separate piece of equipment over here.
Is there any way to bridge that gap? Is there any piece of equipment we can tie that in? Because like right now, it seems like it's
not with the equipment we have that we're using for streaming right now. No.
But is there some equipment that would handle that?
Sure. There's more studio level, higher level equipment that you could tie into the audio system. The mixing board back there it's not the cheapest board in there, in the world. So it's got multiple inputs and outputs. So it does have more interaction available to it, to more equipment, but not with the piece that's up there now.
Because I would think that probably folks' main concern is, who wants to look right at the nubs? At least my other nub, on 4K, Ultra HD, whatever. But just being able to hear if they're tuning in from home.
Right.
And so I wonder if that might be a very easy thing. If there's somebody some sort of a patch or something, maybe we could get is there a computer or something we could hook it to and then just stream from that computer, something like that is what I'm curious about.
I really think it's getting people to use the mics. I usually sit in there and I monitor from my office the live stream of the meetings, and when people are using the mics and they're speaking plainly, audio doesn't seem to be as much of an issue.
Does in the mixing board, I noticed you're using the wireless microphone. I guess it goes to the mixing board.
Yes.
Do we just have one wireless microphone? Or?
There's just one right now.
So I'm thinking that might be something to maybe think about getting a wireless mic on a stand or something for the public when they come and speak.
Right.
Do you have any idea how much those cost?
Not off the top of my head.
Again, not all the time.
Yeah, the audio visual stuff is not what I deal with on a daily basis. It's servers and firewalls and things like that. So wireless mic, probably $250.
Would do you think like a fixed computer, like all it's used is for our meetings in here, just tucked back with the mixing board or somewhere back behind the judge's bench? Is that something that might help instead of using laptops? And things?
That could be a welcome addition to this room, right up there underneath that TV. A small PC, dedicated to that purpose, like the laptops. Those are IT department owners.
And then keep y'all from having to bring those up, and if you're like me, drop them on the stairs, you come up the stairs, and
Right.
Yeah. Going back to cameras, one thing I noticed from my days in district court, Judge Carney knows this as well, is I know the city council has got some kind of a camera that they have on up high on a platform they use for city council meetings. Do you know anything about those kinds of cameras and something like that?
I really do not do a whole lot of audio visual. That's why I say I would bring in someone like Curtis out for the board, actually probably a couple of vendors to come in and look, because the board does a lot of work here in Conway, and I've worked with them on some things, so I would probably bring them in, have them make suggestions and do it well.
If, again, to put you on the spot, if the committee were to come up with some suggestions of what we might like, do you think that's something the vendors might be willing to take a look at and kind of give us an idea of, yeah, that's doable, or that's never going to work, or yeah, we do that for $2,000, whatever it is?
I would be happy to facilitate that with those vendors and get you get the quotes if I knew specifically. Like I said, a PC up there, better streaming equipment. One of the biggest problems in this room is that it's not dedicated to this purpose. So whatever's put in here either has to be placed back here, has to be placed somewhere where it doesn't get taken down, set back up. That's hard on that type of equipment.
Okay. That's why I really appreciate you visiting with me.
Sure.
Do any other members of the committee have any comments or questions?
How's the internet connection? I think I've heard some concerns about how dropping the YouTube feed on the live stream stuff. Is that something we need to upgrade or consider upgrading also?
No, the problems that we had with that initially were my backup routines start at the end of the day, and I had to reconfigure some backups and do some bandwidth allocation to move some stuff around so that these streaming services tend to be fairly needy when it comes to bandwidth resources. So I believe we've got most of those issues taken care of.
Mr. Chair.
Schwahowski?
I think my question is more for the counselor. I'm thinking about the budgeting aspect of this, because the Quorum Court has a budget, right? We have a budget that we can put money in to spend on stuff. But my question, Mr. Counselor, is on the spending of that budget. Mr. Wade works for the county judge. If we appropriate, let's shoot $50,000 to renovate this room for audio, visual, whatever, does the judge have the control over the spending of that money? How does that look? How does that work?
That's a good question, and there's a specific provision. I have to go back and look. I'm just going off memory right now. But Quorum Court, in that statute that outlines everything from referendums and motions, I believe, like subsection H or I or whatever, the very last one, talks about Quorum Court specifically being able to control parts of their own meeting. And I would say this could be one of those things that might be able to fit under that final subsection, which allows Quorum Court to basically designate funds for a specific purpose, which involves their meetings. So I'll have to go back and take a look at that, but I think you're probably going to be okay. Also, and I can't speak for the judge, but my guess is the judge is going to be amenable to, signing off on updating equipment and things like that. It's just a matter of making sure we go through the right process to get it done.
And that's something I would recommend to the chairman as well, as a conversation with the judge once you come up with a plan or something, like I said, for that coordination. Thank you.
Comments from the other justices? Seeing none, comments from the public? All right, seeing none. I'll move on to item number 3, comments from the members of the committee. One thing that I would like to mention that just happened tonight, maybe the committee's input or Councilor Murphy's input is, and Mr. Wade, thank you so much, appreciate you too, is the, when we were coming in, we got our temperature checked for the coronavirus, and there became an issue about reserved seating for members of the public, or you had to have signed up in order to be able to attend. And some members of the public had not been made aware of that, or I hadn't heard that either. I don't know if that's something under infrastructure, but obviously people that are willing to drive down and attend these meetings, really want to be at these meetings, as is their right. And I am concerned if with the coronavirus and we're so spread out in the pews that
I don't want to eat up seating that otherwise be used for public, particularly keeping in mind that the governor has looked at mask restrictions or mandate, and my understanding, I think CDC has reduced the social distance to 3 feet now. I don't know if that's an infrastructure thing. I don't know if that's anything we can even really do anything on tonight or talk about. We have to do that next time. But that is something that I just saw was concerned I would like to bring up. Is that something do we need to address? Is that a rule? If so, how is it being disseminated? Because like I said, I don't want someone to come, show up early, get a seat for the meeting, and then essentially be turned away because they didn't make a reservation. Councilor, do you know anything about the restrictions, the COVID restrictions?
So my understanding is, one, that we're still under an emergency order from Governor Hutchinson, which allows us to use Zoom. It's been reduced, meaning the emergency order only applies to a limited number of things. It's not as broad as it once was. I think there were 10 different emergency orders that were issued, and we're down to 5 or something like that. So because we still have an emergency order from the governor, we're allowed to still utilize the statute that allows us to have people phone in. So one, we do have an emergency order. Two, the issue is the county judge is responsible for county property. And so the county judge issued a court order, I believe at the beginning of this month. He actually issued it county-wide with input from all the county-wide elected officials on what they wanted for their particular offices. So, in regards to wearing a mask, it's my understanding that court order for the first floor, that masks are not required. Margaret, is that correct? Masks are not required for the first floor. They're not required in certain parts of the sheriff's office. They're not required at the circuit clerk's office. They are required at the library. They are required at, I can't remember. They are required in the second floor of this building. It's also the second through fourth floor that masks were still required. So that was part of the court order. Although I hurriedly came in this evening, my understanding is the person that was collecting temperatures was still doing that at the direction of Judge Baker and in reference to that court order. As far as changing that, as far as the assigned seating, I think that was done at Judge Baker's request simply to make sure that we had enough seating for all the justices that were going to be present. I don't know anything about the 3 feet change, if that's true, and I have no reason to believe it's not. I just don't know anything about it. I would think that's something as a judge we need to reach out and let him know, hey, there's been a change, and we can make appropriate provisions for that. But it's kind of this odd deal where the quorum court's in charge of quorum court, just like the video and audio and everything else. You're in charge of that meeting. Judge Baker's in charge of the roof and the floor, and so it's this interplay of groups coming together. As far as, I believe we also, Steve can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we still have courtroom B set up that's running YouTube. So part of that statute that was recently adopted basically allows for quorum courts to publicly broadcast those meetings publicly. And so no member of the public would be turned away in the sense that we still have courtroom B available. Similarly, last month we had a pretty big crowd, probably our biggest crowd we've had since the onset of the coronavirus, and we were able to accommodate that through courtroom B. And we've always allowed people to, when there was public comment, times to be able to come in and speak. We just have shuttled them over, asked them to let us know if they want to comment, and we've made arrangements for that. So, as far as making assigned seating, I guess, that's something that you might want to talk to Judge Baker about amending the assigned seating, but I don't think it's necessarily, Justice Higgins isn't sitting in Justice Higgins' seat necessarily right now, and so it's a fluid issue for everybody here.
Well, I guess really what my question was, is a member of the public sat down on the pew that had heretofore been reserved for the first row of public seating, which I guess now is the last row. It was 2 rows, now it's the last row. And that person was informed are you on the list? What list are you talking about where you're gonna have to leave?
Right.
And of course, that person showed up early to snag a seat in the public gallery, you know, so they didn't have to go to the next door room, the overflow room. And I guess my question is just number one, is that a part of that order? Because I never heard that or saw that. Was it just a miscommunication? Like what caused that situation to happen?
I think what caused the situation is the 6-foot requirement, and we have 13 JPs plus several elected officials that have priority, plus myself and Tom Anderson as employees that are here. And so when you put that group together, that either comes to the maximum that we can put into this building, or room rather, or comes close. So my guess is, I'm just looking, it looks like there was 1, 2, I guess, benches or seats that were available for the public had all those members showed up. And certainly we give priority to JPs and elected officials first, and then after that, the public can have seats that are available.
Right, but like I said, the actual interaction was a county employee was saying, if you are not on this list, you have to leave. And they were in the seat that had formerly, and still is marked just seat. It doesn't say reserved or have Justice's name on it. Is that, I'm hoping it's just miscommunication.
I don't know anything about that specific instance, and I don't know what was told as far as any seats that were reserved or not. So
Yes.
I just wasn't aware, or wasn't part of that conversation.
I mean, I had an entire bench reserved for me. I mean, granted I have a loud mouth, maybe I smell bad, but I don't need it. And I will gladly stand in the corner like I probably should be anyway, if that means 2 or 3 members of the public can sit in, because, you know, I mean, I understand we're in a pandemic, we're trying to make do with Zoom, but to the extent that we accommodate people to be here live, I think that's important for the public to see, again, especially those people who are willing to take times out of their evenings to come down and sit through these committee meetings. But if I'm hearing you correctly, you're not aware of any sort of a order or a policy or anything in place that says you have to sign up ahead of time to reserve one of the public seats in the room.
No, there hasn't been anything on the order. In fact, I think those orders are on the website. You can go and look at it right now as far as what it includes. It doesn't include anything to do with space. I think in the past, and I'm going off memory here too, but in the Zoom invite or other invitations, I know we've specifically have told people about the restrictions we're dealing with, and the courtroom B was available.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments from members of the committee based on that? Comments from members of the public? Mr. Gregory.
Just a question, Counselor. You referred to the court order that's written there. When does the public see a court order? Do we have to go to its file? Do we have to go see that file document and ask for it? Or are all court orders just published online and I don't know where they are? Because things happen, we don't know about it, but it's public information. But we have to go to the county clerk's office and ask to see a copy. Is that how it works?
That's a fair question. I'm not even sure on the publishing the internet. Do you know, Margaret?
The court orders are not published on the internet. I don't have a program at this time that will allow that to be published, or the funding.
I think for funding?
For funding. It costs money to have a service that does that. Because it would tie into where I store those documents, and then they would publish it. And whereas I've got my marriage license on there, it's an expanded amount to include other things, which I would like to do, and I'm scanning things so I can. I just haven't got to the funding part of the money of a reasonable amount to do that with.
So with that said, let me apologize. It would be on the website then, and I apologize for that. But it's my understanding that there was a publication of it.
I think I could speak to your question as to why the public was unaware of the sign-up requirement. Number one, the public did not receive a notice of this meeting or this series of meetings until 1:40 p.m. yesterday afternoon. I did not ever receive any sort of notice that talked about a sign-up of any kind or any sort of other orders.
Yeah, the failure on the notice was on my part. I sent out the first notice, and I don't know what happened. He called me and said, you didn't make your other notice, and it was sitting in my box, so I had to redo it all. I'm sorry.
Well, and we looked on the county courthouse the county website for the information for the meeting, and it also was not there as of 10 a.m. yesterday morning.
Right, because they get their notice.
For the public to know.
They they get their notice when y'all get your notice, and that was a failure on my part, and I apologize.
Any other comments from the public? All right, hearing none. Do any other justices of the committee have any issues they'd like to bring up or mention or discuss?
I just like again to the road department employees through the winter storm, and when Mr. Turner and I were out, I can't even remember what day it was now, but traveling through Cypress Creek and looking at the roads and the damage that was there. I mean, we were driving around in a nice pickup truck there, knee deep, 5 foot deep in holes of mud. They worked their tails off, and I just want to acknowledge that effort and that work. And I say they did a great job.
Any comments from their justices of the quorum report on the committee? Seeing none, any comments from members of the public? Yes, sir.
I'm pro road. I'm for anything. I've lived here 50 years, and I've seen it where we had to buy our own gravel. And I don't think most people realize what it takes to build or maintain a good road, a solid road that will. We have probably very few roads in the county that will stand up to an 8,000-pound load, not very long. The thing about it is, you've got, in our community, we've got 3 companies of garbage pickups that drive the big garbage trucks like the city of Conway. And you got school buses, you got Amazon, you got FedEx, you got UPS. I mean, and that's county-wide, you know, not just counting regular traffic. And like you said, the increase in the numbers is unreal. Even in our community, we live in it nearly a lot county. But the road system is stressed, just like we hear about it in the whole United States, the whole infrastructure, electric, water, sewer, whatever you want to name it, it's stressed. And just like Margaret's deal, everything goes back to money. And, you know, we just got so much in the county. Now the extra people that's coming in, we've seen from Scott's report that tax base is going up, and it's got to be from numbers of people spending money. But you can't imagine how much it costs to do 2 or 3 miles of road like it ought to be done, and the time it takes. I would suggest for y'all to take a ride around with this foreman or somebody. They'll be up for it. I think it would open your eyes. I think everybody needs to see that. Like how many miles of road do we have on that paper? 1,000? Somewhere around there. That's all right.
Somewhere north of 900.
Yeah, it's around 1,000 miles. The thing about that is it ain't just 1,000 mile road, it's 2,000 miles of ditches and thousands of culverts that are rotted out, mashed in on the end, or there ain't no culvert. There's lots and lots of places that need culverts if there's not one. So it's a hard thing. Everything is. It's not just the road department. I would like to see y'all do that.
Thanks, sir. Sir?
Just one comment, and I agree. Takes a lot to build a road. Last month, we heard about a move to raise the load limit on roads. And I believe, if I remember correctly, we were told that we currently build roads to the standard, but that we'd have to upgrade roads to meet that new standard. Is that correct? Could somebody please ask the road department how they test roads to ensure when they build them, they'll hold that number of pounds? I mean, if you say, gee, we're building these roads to standard, and I think they are, then there's gotta be a test process that says this road will hold 60,000 pounds, or it won't. And if you have to build it to 80,000, what do you have to do? But you have to be able to test it. You don't just throw a bunch of gravel down, tamp it, pave it over and say 60,000 pounds, because that's not how you do it. So how do you test it? And that's a question that I think the road department should be able to answer, because they're building them, so they better be able to test them.
Any other comments?
Matt, or, sir, excuse, the total of the roads is, 1,063 miles of road. Just as a rule of thumb, I think, as far as the weight for the roads, is that, it's a tip, like with, if it's with concrete, they use different types of concrete for heavier loads, but just as kind of a rule of thumb, for asphalt and concrete, it's how thick it is. And, the thicker it is, the heavier loads. I mean, you go to an airport where they're landing 747s, there's like 2.5, 3 feet of concrete underneath those airplanes.
And 5 feet of base under that.
Yeah, the base, obviously. And that's one thing we have in Arkansas, is that we have a lot of rock here, you know, so it's pretty good to, a pretty good base most of the time. But, I mean, there are marshy areas too, but anyway, just brief comment.
I want to speak to that bill you were talking about. Justice Boyle brought that bill to raise the load limit to 9,000 pounds for log trucks. I reached out to our state representatives who had sponsored that bill, who co-sponsored that bill, and one of them returned my email and replied to my email, and he said that he believed they were misled into co-sponsoring that, and that if it came up to the floor, he would not vote for that bill to raise that load limit.
There's currently no scheduled activity for that bill, HB 1495, in the Arkansas legislature. They have 2.5 weeks to go in the session, approximately.
Mr. Strang?
You were talking about the culverts too. They do have a program, and some of the culverts they are replacing. I've seen some of those around, and it is a big issue. I have a couple of streets in mind that I'm thinking of where it's actually not the county's culvert that's the culprit. It's driveway culverts that are clogged up, and when they clog up, it runs across the road and tears the road up. And I kind of wonder, well, gee, how much effort are we going to spend repairing the road rather than fixing the culvert? You know, it just makes more sense to fix the culvert than it does to just continually patch potholes on a road that washes out every time it rains. You know?
I have often wondered if it would be cheaper on the county. Right now, you buy the culvert and the county will put it in for you.
Right.
Load of gravel, and they'll install it, and they'll do it right. But I wondered if it would be cheaper, like you say, for let's go ahead and put these guys and they got a culvert and they're not gonna ever put one in. Let's do that and save the river running down the road every time it rains, which eats them up. It don't matter if it's asphalt or steel coat over time, it eats it up, especially in the winter.
And it actually does cost the citizens, if I understand it correctly, because if your culvert is blocking and the road's torn up in front of your house and the county has to come out and fix it, they assess you for that.
They don't look at it like that.
Yeah.
They look at the one-time cost of the culvert. We're not gonna pay that.
Just a suggestion, if anybody wants to get rich right away, you figure out a way to clear out those culverts. And right now, they're just dragging an old tire through the culvert to clear it out. But if anybody's got any ideas or invent something to clear those culverts out, you'll do well.
Culverts are extremely expensive too.
Yeah.
They are high.
All right. No other comments? I entertain a motion to adjourn. Second? All right, we're adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. White.